was just muted up there. You should hear me now talking though. Perfect. Hey Matthew, we were just in a holding pattern, allowing people to hop in the meeting here. You should hear me talking. All right, I think we can get things going here. Thank you for joining, everybody. I see a lot of familiar names. I see a lot of new ones. I look forward to meeting everybody on a more personal basis in the future. I'm going to get this out of the way right now because I know you guys are going to be asking about it. DoorDash gift cards. We're going to have a sign up link on the tail end of this meeting. It'll be a like a Zoho form. Fill it out. That's going to get the information to us. I'll submit it to DoorDash, and then that'll be delivered via email to you. I knew that was going to be like one of the big questions, so I wanted to kind of get that out of the way right now. Um, and then before I hop into it, I do just want to speak as to one of the new changes in our ecosystem. So we have formalized the relationship with 3CX just one degree further. Pardon me. We are now a distributor. Now, what does that change for our existing partners? Not a whole bunch, really. Your day to day does not change at all. But it just takes that one step further. And like I said, it really hammers home that Telin 3CX relationship. It also is going to get rid of some of that confusion that might have existed in the past. You know, what's a solutions provider? Where do you sit in this in the channel? Now, one thing I will say, I do have a little bit of a scratchy throat, so if I mute up and clear my throat, that's what I'm doing here. But let's look at what we're looking at today. So we're going to talk about Y3CX. We're going to look at the slices, so to speak, of the 3CX pizza. Some configuration options, which this one's going to change in the sense of we're going to run these like monthly. I am talking about SD-WAN today. I would appreciate if you guys want to shoot us sales inbox and email with like ideas or things of configuration you might want to see on further meetings. Feel free. We're going to be doing some updates on the licensing model and then on the partner program. So this is kind of funny. The Y3CX slide, I spent a lot of time thinking about this one, and it was one of the harder slides to do. And the reason is because I was thinking of it trying to answer that question for everybody. And really it depends on who's asking, right? So for someone that is a 3CX reseller, a partner, a prospective partner, you might like the ease of the conversion and the deployment. You might like that your deployment strategy, I mean, really from 5 users running the whole way up the ladder is going to be about the same. Your licensing's bigger server, more minutes, more SIP channels, more DIDs. It's really the same. It's just larger quantities. The partner's going to like freedom of choice. You know, you SIP hosting hardware. You have all these different options as far as what to bring to the table. So I'll pick your flavor, but we're going to talk more about that in a future slide. And then lastly, they're going to like the margin they can make with minimal upkeep. So once you clear the conversion, you do your training, you let the dust clear. I mean, really, it's a stable system, and you're just going to be getting the profit off of it. And so what I came up with is scalable, malleable, profitable. Now that's all well and good for someone like probably most of you guys here, but something like your customers that might not resonate with them as well. What are your customers going to like? They're going to like that they can refine their call flow with no real nickel and diming. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to split your sales department. You want to split it from, it was one department, now it's going to be inbound sales, outbound sales. We want to give them a dedicated IVR, a call queue. I mean, really, not only can that be done in less than an hour, probably less than 10 minutes, it doesn't carry any additional cost of goods, right? The licensing is the licensing. You already have that, once you paid for your subscription. They're going to like the data and reporting, their ability to like audit employee activity. But this is a big one that I want to say. This is where you partner. Um, I encourage you guys to pull reports in the system, see what data you have access to. Because when I help my partners with on the sales side, one of the biggest things I do is I sit and I listen. I ask them, how are you using your phone system on a normal basis? Walk me through every step on, because if I don't know what options I have available to me, and if I don't know how they're using their system, I'm not going to be able to recommend changes that are going to make their life easier. And that's what this is all about. All the buzzwords are fun, but it's all about making people's lives easier on the phone. That's how these systems stay in. And then your customers, they're going to like mobile apps, web chat, SMS, anything that can kind of enhance their customer contact, give them that omni-channel buzzword they're looking for. But finally, you have like the actual frontline users, right? And these are the people that you want on your good side because they're the ones that are actually using the phones. So your receptionists, your queue agents, they're going to like how granular they can control things like presence and call routing, just on like the user level in the web client. They're going to like the freedom of that mobile app. They're going to like voicemail transcription. They're going to like internal team chat. Um, Basically anything that makes their life easier. So that's kind of the whys. Let's get into the what's now. The first thing I want to say about this, this is the pieces of the pie about this for years. The first thing I want to say though is that this pie structure itself is a commonly overlooked sales benefit. So 3CX allows us to kind of put the best solution together that we can. When you're coming to a customer, you're the subject matter expert here. You've done the legwork, you've vetted out these different things. You've like let's look at hosting. You've identified the proper hosting provider. You've identified what DC this should go in. Okay, this is going to go in Ashburn, Virginia, because that's going to be the closest one to you. You've sized out that instance based on their circumstances and what you think they need. 3CX in this case is essentially like the vehicle that you're selling all this legwork and research you've done through. And so own it. And the example I'll give you is that I can sit here and I can rattle off on each of these. I can tell you like why our flavor is the best flavor. But if you can't do that, then I would really encourage you to look at some brag sheets from your hosting provider, your SIP provider, because that's one of the big benefits of 3CX is you're not locked in. You're not selling the exact same 3CX as the next guy. And so really own that. And I see that's something that a lot of people don't do. But going through this, I just want to touch on each point briefly here. Let me get a water one moment. So first we have SIP trunking. This is going to be the lion's share of your cost of goods. We're going to look at it a little bit more on a future slide here. I'm not a CPA, but I'll also tell you this carries like the largest tax burden. So it's going to be probably your most expensive. It's going to be at the highest level of tax. You're going to get hit twice on it basically. So you might as well make sure you're sizing these out appropriately. And on the topic of SIP trunking, I get a lot of questions on minutes versus channels. We offer them both. I have plenty of partners that use each of them. As a general rule of thumb, what I can tell you is that When systems get converted, a lot of times you don't have good data. They're coming off of a PBX. We have no idea how much they talk on the phone. They say it's a lot. What does that mean? Is that 2,000 minutes? Is that 20,000 minutes? 200,000 minutes? It's a total unknown. If you don't have good data, you are going to have less risk running this on a channel plan because you have an upper bound for how much the SIP cost can be. Now, that being said, I see the natural kind of life cycle of a partner. They come in on a SIP channel plan, they start recording good data. Maybe 4 months we can go and see kind of the ebbs and flows of usage. And then we put those side by side and we say, okay, their peak usage over the past 4 months was 12 simultaneous, calls to the outside world. They used 18,000 minutes on average. What makes the most sense out of those two? And those late stage partners that are having those, doing that analysis, you'll still find that there's some deals that are going to make a lot of sense on minutes, and there's still some deals that are going to make a lot of sense on the channel plan. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's always a binary one or the other. There's a lot of nuance here, and that's going to be on a case by case basis. On the hosting side, I use hosting because we're a cloud-based company. We like cloud solutions. 3CX obviously does work on premise as well. That's what you would replace this category with if you were doing an on-premise installation. You just look at like your appliance cost, basically. But with hosting, I do have some confusion, I think, in the ecosystem. I want to make sure we address. There's two flavors of it, really. We have dedicated hosting. That is the standard kind of cloud providers that you would think of. That's AWS, that's Google Cloud, it's Azure, that's people like myself, Telin. Um, by the way, we have 3 data centers in North America. Um, then you have hosted by 3CX, which is a real streamlined spin up as well. Um, Basically, I'm trying to say that you have a lot of different tools in your toolkit there. Now, licensing and hardware. When you sell this, when I first started at 3CX and in this industry, I should say, I saw this all as like upfront costs. Licenses were paid upfront, hardware was paid upfront. I've seen a slow change, whereas nowadays a lot of that is rolled into a monthly basis. I'm not saying you have to by any stretch of the imagination, but I do see it done. If you don't do that currently, I would at least work the numbers out to see if you could. Um, Basically, if you're going to break out hardware over a multi-year term, I normally recommend 2 years, 1 year. Your hardware cost becomes too significant to your total cost of goods. It becomes too large of a percentage, in my opinion. A 3-year term plays really nicely with the standard hardware costs that you see with supported 3CX hardware. Now, for the financing of it itself, a lot of my partners that do it are self financing. I know there are third party hardware companies out there. It's about margin versus risk, right? If you have the appetite for risk, and if you know the customer's good for it, maybe it's not a bad idea to self finance that, but you are assuming that risk, and if that bill doesn't get paid, I mean, you're the one that ponied up the money up front. And then on the support side, I like all you can eat plans, but I know that's not viable for everybody. Some people just aren't set up like that. Otherwise, you might be on some type of retainer. You might be on, even just like a break fix plan. I think that all you can eat offering does provide the best customer service. And I think that keeps customers around the longest. But there's a lot of different ways to do that. So I want to get into some numbers here. This is an extract from an actual one of our partners, a real system. It's been up for, I want to say, about 6 months, 7 months now, right in that ballpark. It fluctuates on the extension count because they add people, they remove them. 45 to 55 is what I see that fluctuating around. And I actually took the hardware order that they had placed through us. And so these hardware numbers are accurate too. This is all real. The only liberty I did or I took is I broke the hardware cost out over a 3-year term, just like we had discussed on that last slide. The end user they're not a call center, but they are all heavy. They're a pretty high usage client. And as you can see, our hierarchy of costs here are we have SIP at 260, hosting at 155, hardware at 105, and the license at 75. So the SIP, it was I want to say 18 channels, like 25, maybe 30 DIDs, some associated E911. The hosting was a 8 gig 4 CPU Debian instance, 100 gig disk, and a VPN server sitting in front of it. The hardware was Gnome D735s, and this is actually a good time to mention that we're a big fan of the Gnome devices. We have a great relationship with them, and they're actually running a rebate on these right now. It's $10 a unit, I want to say, on the 3.5s and 8.5s. Shoot our sales box an email, and we can send one of those marketing slicks over to you if you're interested. But then on the license, this was a 24SC Enterprise. So what we can see here is the SIP trunking, like I said, the lion's share of our cost. We can also see that the licensing is kind of a small piece of this deal. When I break it out on the actual, I divide it by the amount of people on this PBX, we'll see 518 for SIP, hosting 309, license 147, hardware 210. That comes out to like it's a just south of $12. It's like 1180 per user is what that came out to. Now they're going to have support costs for sure. I mean, I know the partner, they are supporting this system. I can't quantify that. I don't have a lot of visibility into that. So that's, in the interest of transparency, the only thing that's being left out here. Now, I also wanted to talk about the kind of per user basis. When you sell 3CX, I don't want you to think you have to do that on a per user. There's a lot of deals that make more sense to come at them with an itemized basis. Um, but when you're quantifying your costs, like internally, when you're working out the numbers, I recommend doing that on a per user basis because that graph I showed you, I didn't just go and cherry pick the best one that I could put together. That was legitimately the very first graph I made. I said, let me think of a deal that that a deal name that I can think of just real quickly. Oh, here it is. And that's what it came out to. But I did this 4 or 5 more times, and the numbers, they're not exact, but they look very, very similar. When you quantify your costs on a user basis, you're going to be able to see the outliers better. And what is an outlier to me? An outlier is something that needs further investigation. Do I, am I over provisioned on something here? Am I, is some part of their call flow actually using more resources than it needs to? Um, and also, while we're on the screen, when you break that hardware over the 3-year basis, you can see $2.10 is not a substantial piece. If you broke this over a 2-year basis, hardware would be, the second in line basically on your costs. But back to the user versus itemized bills. The one last thing I want to say about it is sometimes I feel like when you sell it on a per user basis, it gives the end user the impression that it almost makes them not want to scale. They're paying $30 a user. They know if they bring on 10 more staff, their bill's going up by $300. Whereas when it's an itemized basis and you can tell them, hey, I just have to add a couple more channels, I have to add a DID or two, sometimes that resonates with them a bit better. But that's part of knowing your customer, really, because there's not going to be one right answer on that. Now, we talked about the pieces of the pie. This is one extra piece here. Um, we wish these were utilized more. We love the PepLink devices. So, the topic of this is kind of how to differentiate yourself from the other hosted offerings. And this is really a great way. There's a lot of different flavors of SD-WAN. There's a lot of vendors. I'm going to talk about what I know about. So these devices here, they have a built-in SIM card slot. So you could, put in your AT&T SIM card and connect your traditional ISP to it. And that'll give you a degree of failover. The 20X specifically is what we see a lot of used. And I'm going to actually talk a little bit about the technology. I'm not going to go into it that deep. There's better people than I to explain like the intricacies and the minutia of PepLink. But I'll give you just a quick overview. Plus, PepLink made some great animations. That'd be a shame to not use them. So there's a trifecta when it comes to PepLink and Speed Fusion, which is the service in question. There's a trifecta of services. The first one that you're going to get is bandwidth bonding. What this does is it allows you to take multiple WAN connections and bond them into a single data pipe. So if I have two 50 meg connections, one on cellular, and then my traditional ISP, I don't have two connections anymore. I have one, and it just adds that the transfer speeds together. I'll stay on here for just a second so you can look at the great animations. And then two more. We have WAN smoothing and hot failover. So WAN smoothing essentially it comes at a premium of bandwidth. That is going to be the premium. It comes at a premium of bandwidth, but what it does is it sends redundant packets, and those packets can fill, any place that you have loss. And so yes, you're using more data, but as you can see, it's going to smooth out the process for you. It's actually great for VoIP systems. I This is a time I should tell you, by the way, I have a PepLink directly behind me that I meant to hook up for this and I did not. So if I do have any jitter, don't blame the PepLink. It's not hooked up right now. And then hot failover, that is for persistent connectivity. And this is actually kind of the when I first was introduced to PepLinks was when we installed one at our Tampa office. And I remember I was talking to Josh as he was configuring it. And he had told me, he said, okay, just unplug the network from the wall. And I did. And her call didn't drop. And I thought it was the craziest thing. And that's what that hot failover gives you. So if during a dropped WAN connection, your active call stays live, which is pretty neat. So let's look at the numbers on it now, though. Realistically, this 20x, they say, up to around 50 users, 60 users on it. It's roughly a $400 device. Speed Fusion, okay, $50 a month is what the Speed Fusion is going to run you. You're going to need a data plan, for that SIM card. Depending on what you're going to use, if it's just in a failover configuration, you don't really need an unlimited data plan. If you are not using it in a failover configuration, you probably would want unlimited data, but you will have a cost of a data plan. Your hosted instance, you'd want the VPN server in front of the PBX. We do, I think $16 is what we charge for that. So if you break out those numbers realistically for 10 users, I could see that might be a bit of a tough swing. $7.70 a user roughly. That's going to be more than I believe your SIP was on a per user basis. So that might be a little tough. But as you start working your way up the range, at 50 users, you're at less than $2 ahead on the device. It's a minor piece. So back to our previous example, and we had, I think it was an $11.80 cost of goods. I could take my cost of goods to still shy of $14, drop a PepLink at the customer location, provide the SD-WAN. They get great service, but it's not something you're doing behind the scenes. I'm always of the opinion that if you're going to do something, you let people know about it. And so you're going to him and haw and talk it up the whole way as you put it in. And that's something that a lot of these other providers aren't going to bring to the table. And if they do, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for it. Now, I'm going to hop into 3CX licensing next. There's been a lot of questions I get around licensing. So, first off, no more free licenses. I'm very happy about that. No more standard licenses. That's great news. No more perpetual licenses. It's wins all around the board in my opinion. Before I talk about the dedicated ones, I do want to mention we have two categories of license now. You have startup licensing, you have dedicated licensing. Within that, you have two categories of startup and two categories of dedicated. There's the startup free. That's the only free key that exists now, the startup free. And then you have startup pro. From there, we have the dedicated pro, which you get. This is the traditional license that you're used to dealing with, the pro and enterprise. So all those standard features that previously existed were moved into the pro licensing. SMS, hot desking, and those were already on pro, I know. CRM integration, call recording. And then the enterprise license is pretty much unchanged, I'd say. You have the skill based routing, start stop call recording, custom logos, um, and that's the whole nine. Now, your incremental cost between them is pretty minor when you break it out per user, like we were looking, less than, I'd say, less than a dollar for sure, on a per user basis. But I am really happy about the free licensing and the standard going away. The reason being is because you would have some customers, some end users that, they're really hesitant to reach into their wallet, and they hit the website and they say, "Oh, you want to sell me this?" But they say they got a free one. That'll be good enough for us, and maybe it isn't. And then you have to come back and collect more money from them after the fact. That's a bad customer experience. The standard licensing, I thought that it wasn't quite feature rich enough for a normal production system, in my opinion. For years, we've been talking pro and enterprise only, and now we don't have to have that discussion anymore. They did it for us, so I'm very happy about that. The only other thing to say is that free licensing was not worth anything as far as your revenue quota goes, for the 3CX partnership. I would talk to people and I would feel bad for them. They have 25 PBXs out there. They're all on free licensing. You're getting kicked out of the partner program because you're not producing any revenue. And on one hand, I would get where they're coming from, right? But they're deploying systems, they're trying, but you're not generating any revenue, so you can't expect to really get rewarded for it. But I'd say that rounds out the licensing piece. The next thing to talk about would be the partner statuses. So this is another one that's ruffled feathers, and I've gotten a lot of emails about it, some more strongly worded than others. I think these are great changes. So bronze partnership has dropped to $1,000. So it's less than what it previously was. I think that if you're a transacting 3CX partner, what does that shake out to? It's like a system a quarter if you don't have any renewals to run, somewhere in that ballpark, to maintain bronze partnership. What it's going to do is it's not going to penalize those guys that are doing 4 or 5 systems in a year. They weren't able to get to the previous 2,500 for bronze, and they basically they got punished for it. And I would sympathize with those guys, because especially if you're just getting into this industry, some people aren't able to hit the ground running. And I think that this is going to really alleviate that burden. Like, if you're trying to do it, you should hit bronze. Now, one thing to note though is that the support is on startup and hosted only. You have an NFR key that is an 8SC Enterprise NFR, and then all of these partnerships, partner statuses, do come with like a 3CX hosting NFR as well. But so bronze has dropped to 1,000. That's the big takeaway. Silver, on the other hand, this isn't anything official, but in my personal opinion, silver is kind of the new gold. $10,000 in revenue, that's a good bit. If you're hitting 10,000, I'd say you're a serious 3CX partner. You're getting 16SC Enterprise NFR. The one other change that is that you need an advanced certification now to be in the silver level. Your support is unlimited at that point. You do fall into you're eligible, I should say, for lead distribution at that point. So that's one thing that I would hear a lot of as well. Oh, we don't ever get leads. We don't this and that. Um, I will say, I was last I talked to 3CX. They were retooling some of that lead distribution, and I would keep my eyes out for further information on that. But the one thing to make a point of: unlimited support here at the silver level. Now going into gold, $25,000 in revenue on a gold for a gold partner. You get a full-sized NFR key at this point, 32SC Enterprise. It doesn't get bigger than that for the NFRs. That's kind of the big changes, I'd say. Priority support, I believe, is where this falls in. Is gold. No, it's platinum. Pardon me. So platinum partnership is a 50K revenue goal. Your NFRs are unchanged. Your lead distribution, I'm sure you're higher up on the list. But from here on out, a lot of it's going to be margin based. Yes, you're going to be making more money on these licenses as you step your way up the ladder. But yeah, so $50,000 for the platinum partnership, $150,000 for titanium partnership. They both come with priority support. Both have 32SC Enterprise licenses, for your NFR, that is. So by and large, I think it's been really needed and a great change to the 3CX partner base. Basically, these higher statuses, I'm not surprised they went up, and I got a lot of complaints about that. But I mean, you have to think as other partners in the ecosystem become more mature and start selling more 3CX, these goalposts have to move to be able to differentiate them. And so this probably isn't the last time that the revenue goals are going to go up. I would expect in a few years to probably happen again. But that's kind of the natural life cycle of it. Now, before I finish everything out here, I want to just rehash that one point I made is that I am going to be running these on like a monthly basis. Um, I had some ideas on things I wanted to put in here and didn't want to stretch it out into hours and hours. I also didn't want to say things that maybe you guys knew it all already. I am open to ideas on things that you want to see in these webinars, points that you want to make. What I'm going to do is also, if you have any really good questions that you think would be beneficial for everybody, I'll take some of those questions. I'll answer them. Like send me an email with them. I'll answer them on the next webinar we run. But at this point, I will have Mona, if you're still around, if you could just drop that. Oh, perfect. There it is. So you should see in our meeting chat a Zoho link. That's for the DoorDash sign up. Hop in there, fill out your info. It's going to just ask some basic stuff: first name, last name, email address, phone number. Um, and it will be a slight delay because I'm gonna have to wait for everyone to fill it out, and then I'll submit that to DoorDash and we'll get it taken care of. So John had a question on suggestions on how to get leads. That is a $1 million question, but I will say a few things here. One, I'd say that every single day there are people that decide that they hate their phone system and they want to rip it out. We talk to them all the time, or my partners talk to them, and my partners bring them to me. So one thing I'd say is that to add on to that, people are getting absolutely fleeced in regards to telephony. Historically, it's been something that's crazy margin. These monopolized companies are charging people way too much for their service, and so you have kind of a perfect storm, right? There's a lot of people that are paying way too much, but there's also a lot of people that are truly, truly unhappy. Um, I would say that those should be kind of your ins. I have partners that do free bill analysis. Send me your bill. I'll take a look at what you're paying for, and I'll tell you if you're wasting money or not. And you have no idea how many of those that we see where the bill gets sent over. They have 400 DIDs on it. And you're like, wow, 400 DIDs. That's a lot. And they're like, we don't have 400 DIDs. Yeah, you do. You've been paying for it for a year now. Um, One other thing, and I actually would stole this from an old boss I had, is to look for synergies between industries. An example is like a moving company. When a moving company, I just saw what Nathan put there. See, it's true. I'm telling you. Um, so let's say that you're a corporate mover, right? A corporate mover is moving offices for other businesses. When other businesses move offices, what do they need? They need phone systems, right? That is, I'm not saying that's going to be your $1 million ticket right there, but that's something to think about is what other synergies exist that you can go and capitalize on. Now, I am of the opinion, I'll just keep talking on the leads piece. I'm of the opinion that beating down doors is a good way to generate business. I would challenge you to, as you're driving down the street, over the next week or so, make a mental note of businesses that you see that you think would fit into your offering well. You're going to see strip malls as you're driving down the street. Make a note of them. Start assembling some data on those. So you have a spreadsheet with the names of these businesses. Find a contact email for these businesses, start marketing to them. And I don't mean go pay a marketing company $1 million to put together this, big bundle of material for you. Start trickling in emails, and then go in there and try to figure out who the right contact is. From what I've seen on the sales side, half the battle is getting in front of the right people. And if you can do that in a method, in a controlled approach, I think you'll find some results. Can everyone give me just a thumbs up in the chat if they're having success on the Zoho DoorDash link there? I just want to make sure everything's working smoothly for everyone. Good here. All right. All right. Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. It's the first time we've done that. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that everything was running smoothly. They're going to give me like a CSV file with all the codes in there, and I will distribute them. So Jim, to answer your question, and hopefully I answer it and I don't misinterpret it and answer it incorrectly. Um, and actually, pardon me, Mona, could you send that link again? For the one guest that just yeah, perfect. So back to you, Jim. Normally, the what I see in this process, and hopefully I'm answering it, correctly. Normally, how I see these ports go is people they'll deploy 3CX, they'll configure it, they'll basically have the system built out with everything except for the phone numbers at that point. They will get a SIP trunk. Let's say I build a SIP trunk for the partner. I throw a temporary DID on there, and then we build out the call routing in the same way that it's going to exist after the port's complete. Now we have an inbound call that when you call the temporary number, it's going to flow in just like the normal number would that you're going to port. That's great for the inbound side of it, but now we have to do the outbound. So you're going to need to do caller ID verification. So you can spoof your outbound call to make it so that it's looking like it's coming from the number that we want to port. So now our system's standing up, the call routing's working inbound, outbound. I'm going to set another set of basically I'm going to add the DIDs that we're looking to port, even though they haven't ported yet. We're going to add those in, preemptively build out all of their inbound routing. And then it's just as simple as setting up a number forward. You're going to set up a number forward from that losing carrier, the traditional carrier, to your new carrier. It's a pretty flawless or smooth process at that point. You're really not going to know exactly when that port completes unless you're paying close attention. Because as soon as that port happens, the losing carrier that had that number forward, they no longer control it. So that falls right off. Now it's coming directly in to the inbound rules you had already set up. You had already told the trunk to keep an eye out for these DIDs. And since you were spoofing the caller ID to show the number that was porting, well, that's already set up for you. That number exists on your trunk now. The caller ID verification piece isn't actually needed. But basically it just cuts right over. I hope that answered the question and I didn't miss the mark there. Perfect. Richard, he wants more time. Richard wants more time. Matthew said, how many hotels do you see using 3CX? We actually run across a good bit of them. I will say that 3CX licensing is set up ideally for things like hotels. Basically any type of business where they have a lot of phones and they don't use them very often is a great fit. Now, those high volume call centers and all that, it's still a great fit, but I love it. I love it in schools. I love it in manufacturing. I love it in hotels. You got to think, calling grandma back from your hotel room is kind of a thing of the past. People aren't really using that anymore. So your usage is really low. 3CX does have that hotel module that integrates, and I'm going to do this off the top of the head, so hopefully I'm fairly accurate. That is the Mitel protocol and the Fidelio protocol that those integrate with. Now, one thing I've seen is that there are 1,000,001 like PMSs for hotels that you can that are available, and so you'll talk to all these different hotels and you'll get a different name each time on what they're using. A lot of them are built off of similar protocols, though. So they might piggyback off that Fidelio protocol already. Richard, I will make it an hour next time just for you, my friend. Any words on phone hardware? So, we are a Snome shop. I can source a lot of different things, but if you ask me what you should buy, I'm a big fan of the Snome products, and I'll tell you why. So they all come 3-year warranty out of the box. That coincides with if you're amortizing hardware over your term, that coincides with how long you're probably gonna lease the hardware for. And so then you throw in a hardware refresh on their contract renewal after 3 years. Um, we like them though as well because they have US presence, a really good one. I've had some really interesting requests I've had to throw Snowm before. Things I needed that were way unorthodox, or something where I needed information, really specific information. Um, I would still be waiting here if it was some of the other vendors. They're just so great on that. Then the other thing is that they have a map program. So basically, there is if you're going to resell Snowm products, there is a price point that you cannot advertise it beneath. Now, what does that do? That insulates you from kind of that Amazon epidemic. A lot of my partners that are selling snow, I mean, they're making 30 points of margin on the hardware, sometimes more, and that's nowadays is a lot. Easy to work with. They also control their own manufacturing, which is very, very neat. They're one of the only vendors to do that, to my knowledge. What we normally see as far as the Snowman products go is the D785s. That's kind of their flagship product right now. I know they have some more around the corner. D735s, D717s. Although the D717s are in the lower range, normally it's D785s and 35s that we're doing. Hey, no problem at all. Well, thank you all again. I think I got one more slide actually. Thank you. Here's the contact information. That's our main sales line. That's our email. Feel free to send any questions, concerns. Um, so Matthew, Snom and VTech are actually like one and the same. I might, if you have a particular model, I haven't looked at a ton of the VTech products, but if you have a particular model, shoot it over. I bet you we could find it. Um, but yeah, feel free to send any requests or questions or anything you want to see on this next one over to sales@telin.com, and we'll see you next time. Hey, oh, I have some people asking about recordings. We do have this recorded. When I end this meeting, it's going to scrub that recording, email it over to us. I will email out those recordings to those that ask. If you want it, shoot an email to sales@telin.com. Say, hey, can I have that recording? And we will get it to you. Thank you.